Hello, I'm Professor William Watkin, and I've come down from my ivory tower today to talk to you about the clown mask phenomenon that is currently sweeping the nation in the days leading up to Halloween. The phenomenon seems to have begun in the States and has crossed over the Atlantic rather rapidly, and it consists of individuals putting on scary clown masks, which seem to be inspired by the clown in Stephen King's novel, if you can call it that, It, and then sneaking up on people, primarily children, but I think also women as well, so in other words, in inverted commas, the vulnerable, and scaring the bejesus out of them. This phenomenon, which was initially just rather sinister, is snowballed slightly out of control. At least one individual in the UK has been prosecuted. It's led to sort of a kind of sexual menace with men dressing up and frightening women on streets at night, and it's also led to some degree of social media bullying. What's interesting about the phenomena is its relationship to social media. So, for example, the development of the phenomena, it's going viral, seems to be directly related to use of social media platforms. So the social media platforms have been places where, having done the clown mask phenomena in real time, in real life, one films that or talks about that or takes photographs of that, and then one puts it on social media platform, and then people learn about it on social media platform, and then they have copycats, but also people learn about it on social media platform, and it raises the sort of feeling of fear and trepidation about encountering clown masks, and the thing spirals out of control. And to the point where something minor has now become something major in I don't know, a matter of a couple of weeks. Social media platforms have also been used to disseminate use the clown mask as a form of online bullying and trolling. So, for example, the clown mask anxieties have been used to manipulate particularly younger people using Instagram, often illegally because they're too young and therefore too manipulable, and has even led to threats of sexual violence. It seems only a matter of time before the clown mask phenomena leads to an act of real violence. There have already been a couple of arrests, I think, in the UK. One individual actually was carrying a real knife, and it seems inevitable, surely, that either one of the clown maskers will be injured, one of the clown maskers will actually be somebody with mental problems, with psychological problems, and will injure somebody else, or there'll be some kind of injury, maybe self-harm, that will manifest itself through internet bullying. So the clown mask phenomenon is something that occurs in the real world, transfers itself to the virtual world, and then from the virtual world transfers it back into the real world in a kind of interchange that is demonstrates the sort of velocity that is typical of our age, to the point where something very minor suddenly becomes a significant thing. So I just want to register that before the phenomena passes, as these phenomena all seem to be significant ephemera in the world in which we live today. Things that on the one hand are totally meaningless, but on the other hand are individuals and communities working through new technology and social media to discover what it means to be Web 2.0, what it actually means to be the kind of human beings who communicate with each other in a virtual environment rather than a natural environment. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the mask itself and the act of masking. What's very interesting, I think, between an individual wearing a mask, a clown mask, and the use of social media is that both the mask, is that social media itself is a form of masking, but it seems to be an inverted form. So if you think of what a mask is, you are physically present in front of someone, but you wear a mask, and that mask to some degree anonymizes you, and that gives you license to behave in a way that you wouldn't behave if that person had direct access to your face. Obviously, what the mask does is speaks to the complexity of the interpersonal relationship, which we probably don't even begin to fully understand. In other words, how humans set up social relationships through the way their faces look, through the use of eyes, through their posture, and a wide variety of other, perhaps impossible to immediately perceive interactions in the physicality of one human to another, and that determined until, pretty much how most of our communications occur. The mask allows you, therefore, to sort of negate some of those, and that gives you license to behave in a different way. And that seems to facilitate people to behave in ways that are socially unacceptable, and gives them a license to behave in a way that would be otherwise shameful or taboo. So that's how masking seems to work in this context. Now, how does that relate to social media? Well, isn't that what social media is? But the other way around. So whereas with wearing a mask, you are physically present with another person, so that's very old school, that's very flesh on flesh, two bodies in a room and so on, and the mask produces a sort of distancing effect. With social media, there is already the distancing effect, which is facilitated by the technology, and so the social media itself is a form of masking, and that seems to be the origin of why trolling is such a phenomenon. For example, social media allows you to wear a mask which is sufficient enough to distance yourself from who you actually are, and in this way you can behave in unconscionable ways, excessively violent ways, and so on. Indeed, if one definition of trolling works above all others, it's people taking on a persona, and that seems to be the most common use of the term trolling now. So trolling is not insulting someone or being aggressive to someone, but it's taking on a persona in which you overemphasize everything that you say or do to get a reaction. Why do you do that? Because getting a reaction online, so in particular let's think of Twitter, it produces more hits, produces more visibility, and that is the whole point of being on social media. So the whole crack cocaine of social media is likes, hits, shares, retweets. And so people have realized that if you take on an exaggerated persona, wear a mask if you like of who you are, that tends to produce a greater response than if you behave in a rational, normal way. Yet social media masking is very different, because you're not in a room with somebody, and you're not in a room, you're not present to them, so you don't actually need to wear a mask in that way. And so in that case then, social media provides a mask that allows you to enter into an intimate relationship with other people, whilst at the same time being masked from them in such a way as you can behave in a more problematic or more transgressive manner, whereas a normal mask is something that takes you in where you're already in close proximity to someone and takes you away. So internet masking allows you from a distance to get closer, whereas the clown mask allows you from closeness to get further away. Obviously what these two relationships have to do with the internet is this idea of virtual and actual. In the actual, we presuppose that we're actually in the world, that we're in direct relationship with other people, and an actual social relationship, we tended to assume, is one person talking to another. Certainly we have technologies that deactualize that, for example letters and other forms of media, but it's not until we had Web 2.0 that we had a media form that really changed that fundamental relationship of the actual. In the past, people have talked about the effect of new media in my field, in philosophy, particularly in terms of hyperreality, and assumed that it was the image and the way that the perfection of the image using technology would undermine our belief in the real, and would also undermine our attraction to the real, because the virtual would be more attractive than the real, and we would therefore fail to have a close relationship with the real, and therefore we'd live in a world of the hyperreal. But I think this actually misconstrued what social media and what the internet is actually done, and it perhaps leads to a misunderstanding of what human beings actually are. All the internet does is profoundly enhance what it is that makes us human, and what it is that makes us human is not our relationship to reality or our relationship to images, but our relationship to each other. And so naturally, it wasn't until Web 2.0 that a properly enhanced virtual environment on the internet was created, and that was the virtuality of social relationships, not the virtuality of a world that you watch online and that isn't a real world, and so on and so forth. And you can see that, for example, these days when we talk about the use of imagery on the internet and the sharing of imagery on the internet, yes, we talk about the images, but it's actually the phenomenon of sharing the images, at least for me, that is more significant. So yes, imagery of ISIS decapitating hostages, or images of people brutally wounded in bombs in airports, are a significant part of our life, but they're not. We had imagery of that before. What is significant now is the means by which we share the imagery, and so it's the sharing, the virtuality of sharing, not the virtuality of capturing that material, that is a significant part. And the clown mask phenomena seems to me very much a part of that, and very much an interesting comment. And the reason I find it interesting, I'll conclude on this, is because of this constant interaction between the virtual and the actual through these two different versions of masking that produce a sort of chiasmatic, sort of Mobius strip, sort of spiral of infinity of interrelationships between virtual and actual. So for example, you're in a natural environment, you're a person on the street, you put on a mask which produces a virtuality here just being a distance between who you are and who you present yourself to be. It's enough to put on a mask to allow you to behave in a way that seems to be non-actual. It's not you, it's a mask, and so you can behave in a certain way. You record that material and you put it online, and then it becomes shared online, and it perpetuates. When the material's online, you are then to another level. You kind of reverse the situation. When you put on a mask to distance yourself from other people, you then use the masking effect of social media platform, the fact that you're at one remove, the fact that people are not there to judge you directly, to produce an intimacy with people. Set up a community of like-minded sadists, set up a community of people who want to respond against like-minded sadists, and so on and so forth. And then these manifestations then make themselves known again on the street. People maybe demonstrate, people going on the street and wearing more clown masks, and so you have this very, very interesting interrelationship. So on the one hand, the clown mask phenomena is just daft, it's just stupid, and within a few weeks, probably after Halloween, we won't remember it, and I hope we won't remember it, because the only way we will remember it is if someone gets really hurt, and it's such a daft thing that I hope that won't happen. So it's one of those passing phenomena, but on the other hand, it's a very, very significant part of our understanding of what social media is, and particularly how it relates to the phenomena of the virtual and of masking. Social media allows us all to wear a mask so that we can behave in a way, an augmented way, what we call trolling, in such a way as we can affect other people. I suppose my question is clowning, however, going to replace trolling? In other words, will the human thirst for physical interrelationship, for being in a room with somebody else, really be replaced by the virtual relationship of the internet? Or is trolling just one step towards this greater, more complex phenomena of clowning? And I would define clowning as taking trolling from social media and putting it back on the street in such a way as it then goes from the street back onto social media, producing this to and fro motion. This to and fro motion of the virtual, the actual, of being distanced from someone and of being intimate with someone is a fundamental quality, I think, of social media. And it's something that I call in my work intimate. Do you get it? Intimacy, distance. And it's this paradox, this complexity, this sort of inability to differentiate directly between being intimate with someone and being distanced from someone that has always been the fundamental definition of what it means to be human. And if that's the case, then I think that social media can justifiably be said to have changed, or to potential to change who we are as humans. And I think the clown mask phenomena is an interesting development in that field. So are we moving from trolling to clowning? In other words, are we moving from a virtual masking to an interaction between virtual and actual masking? Only time will tell, but I think that clowning is an inevitable consequence of the movement from your room in front of your laptop here back onto the street and interaction with humans, but this time a changed interaction, a clowned interaction, if you will. Okay, that's all I have to say about that today.